Welcome to this week's Head to Toe Healing Live. As you know, Dr. Kevin Reese created Head to Toe Healing, where he utilizes three macro methods. They're the musculoskeletal system, nutrition, and mindfulness. In our membership, by utilizing these three methods, people get their bodies in a position where it can start healing itself, getting out of chronic pain, and regaining their health. It's very exciting, and we're glad that you're joining us today. My name is Coach Karen, and today we're going to be discussing the topic of hypoglycemia. And joining me today are our three panel of specialists, Coach Ryan, Coach Gingy, and Coach Sean. So if you have questions that you would like us to address, we'll do our best to get to those. Just drop them in the comments and we'll try to get over to you. But hyperglycemia, it's a condition where the blood sugar, the glucose levels in the body reduces below normal. With that, it can be a little bit problematic. So I wanted to start over with Coach Ryan. With that, Ryan, would you please elaborate a little bit more about the details of hyperglycemia and how that can impact one's health?
Okay, so huge questions. And I do bring up low blood sugar a lot, but I don't usually elaborate too much on it because it actually can be really complicated. But the easiest way to put it, I know it's not much detail, but it usually does correct itself, okay, just on our normal program. Getting on all 90 essential nutrients that you need to manage blood sugar, that you need to manage insulin, that your cell membrane needs to recognize insulin and to let the sugar into the cell. Of course, getting off the bad foods. And if they are eating the standard American diet, chances are literally just changing that will actually fix the hypoglycemia. There's some simple dietary strategies that we can talk about later. But in short, without discussing hypoglycemia specifically or specifically doing anything about it, our normal program usually does fix it. But I do want to give you an idea on the sheer amount of quite serious problems that have something to do with hypoglycemia. Either the hypoglycemia will cause the problem or they're associated. They happen at the same time. They have similar causes. And I have a list of a bunch of things that can contribute to that, different deficiencies and different toxins and stuff like that too. But let me run through this list here. And I didn't even consult Google on this. This is just from my archives. Google would probably even have some more that I didn't think about. But what I've got here is alcoholism. And actually, I would personally call alcoholism a symptom of hypoglycemia. And we can explain that a little bit more later. That one is a huge, huge tell to me. Autism, bedwetting, bipolar, bruxism or teeth grinding, brain fog, memory issues, AFib or palpitations, chronic fatigue syndrome or adrenal exhaustion, seizures and coma, which is well known. If you have severely low blood sugar, you can have a seizure or have a coma. And that's not what the average person is going to experience. They're probably going to have more of these more subtle things. You know, their mood crashes when they get really hungry or something, grind their teeth at night. You know, it's not always so obvious. Candida, I'm not sure if I said that. Dementia, full-blown dementia, again, serious cases. But you see in more minor cases, you get the brain fog and the memory problems and stuff like that. Depression and anxiety, both strongly in the blood sugar category. That could be both high and low blood sugar. Canker sores, eczema, obesity, diabetes, interestingly, right? Diabetes, they have high blood sugar, yet hypoglycemia is the most common in diabetics. So they say, at least. I have a strong feeling that it's very widely underdiagnosed. And we can talk about that a little bit later because it usually doesn't show up on your blood. So it's usually unnoticed. And all those minor symptoms, you know, they might give you tranquilizers or something like that, or antidepressants or something. They're not probably going to recognize that it's low blood sugar. Even most alternative practitioners won't be testing for it either. Hyperactivity. All of these things could have food allergies involved as well, by the way, but hyperactivity, paranoia, schizophrenia, psychopathic behavior, and antisocial behavior. There's many, many decades, a literal mountain of evidence linking low blood sugar and food allergies to all types of antisocial behavior. Irritability, getting tired after eating, shaking or tremor, especially if it's on an empty stomach. You know, you see those commercials with the Snickers bar where the person's getting really angry and they give them a Snickers bar and it calms right down. that type of thing will happen with low blood sugar. So there's actually some truth to that Snickers commercial. So especially if somebody's really irritable when they're hungry, low blood sugar is strongly indicated, but especially if they're kind of trembling, right? Trembling, shaking, fainting, sweating, anything like that, that's severe, severe low blood sugar. Hallucinations, again, in the psycho type of problems, heart palpitations already mentioned, dyskinesia or jerky movements, uncoordinated movements, uncontrolled cravings, and I would put obesity in that category as well. Again, we tend to think of this as a high blood sugar problem, but remember, diabetics are actually the most likely to crash into low blood sugar. And lastly, estrogen dominance. And once again, there's probably more because I didn't even Google it. And I could probably search a little bit deeper and dig up some more there as well. So that's a heck of a lot of problems. And let me define this as well, because people think that, like, in the diabetic state, you're most likely going to have high blood sugar all the time. Meaning, if you take your blood sugar in the morning, it's probably going to be over 100. And you didn't even eat. You didn't eat for 8 hours or 12 hours or something, and it's still high. So the diabetic state, it is mostly high most of the time. But I said that diabetics are the most likely to have hypoglycemia. And one of the reasons is because of the meds that they're on, especially if they're on insulin. And any hyperglycemic drug can lower the blood sugar too much. That's well known in the medical world anyways. It's a bit of a tricky thing to find out their dose. And since we need different levels of insulin and blood sugar every day, you know, your dose one day could be fine, but your dose the next day, because you did something different, you exercised more or ate more or something like that, or ate less, that the diabetic drug might work too well on that second day and lower it. But really, the definition is that on a 6-hour glucose tolerance test, this is generally the definition for alternative practitioners, is that you are considered a hypoglycemic if on a 6-hour glucose tolerance test, your blood sugar dips at any point during that test lower than when it started. So your blood sugar might have been high to start with. Still, if it dips below your baseline, especially after eating, which is what the glucose tolerance test does, that's an indication of hypoglycemia. So just to reiterate that, this is very important. Your blood sugar could actually still be high, but since you have a relative hypoglycemia compared to your baseline there, even if it's high, you could be considered a hypoglycemic and have hypoglycemic symptoms. And like I said at the beginning, I know that this can sound complicated very, very quickly, but in general, there's so many different nutrients involved, and our general food guidelines work very well. So typically these symptoms do go away without us paying particular attention to them.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. And you just got started. That is amazing. So, with that, it sounds like there is definitely hope for people when you were mentioning that when people get on our program, change their dietary lifestyle, get off the poor four foods, start implementing the right nutrition, it can turn around relatively easily. Is that right?
Yep.
That's fantastic. Is there a time frame that typically happens in, or I would imagine just knowing a lot of our members, typically they have a lot of other cofactors going on and other issues. But in general, how quickly do you think it's something that could be turned around?
I have seen it turn around quite quickly, especially in the behavioral cases and the outright like schizophrenic type cases. Those can turn around quite quickly, but it does depend on what else is going on. You know, our membership is not really a good representative population because we tend to attract people who have a lot of problems and they've had a very tough time turning them around. So we get a lot of tough customers right through the door. But the average person, in my experience over the years, it has been relatively simple. And that's true for diabetes as well, as long as they're willing to commit to it, which is one benefit our program has, is it locks them in. You know, some people might think that's a negative. Oh, you got to get a whole year up front. But actually, that's one of the biggest benefits to the program, because when you're locked in, you're most likely to actually do it. You know, people dropping out is one of the biggest reasons that people fail in the first place. If they go on to the next thing, and on the next thing, they see another Facebook ad and, oh, maybe that's the answer. And then just don't follow through with the program. So yeah, relatively simple in general, but when you think low, metabolic function tends to be low, tends to be struggling. So we've talked about metabolism a lot, you know, pretty much every week it comes up. And if they have severe metabolic dysfunction, blood sugar is only one part of that. So I do expect the entire metabolism to improve. But again, if they have lots of metabolic problems, it's going to take longer, especially if the thyroid is involved there. And if the hypoglycemia, if we're talking about older people, they probably had hypoglycemia first, right? That was probably 30, 40, 50 years ago for them when they started to have some initial symptoms long before anything was officially diagnosed. And later on, they may have been diagnosed with diabetes or hypothyroidism or something like that. But what I'm saying is that if they're older, chances are the metabolism is way more screwed up than it would be in a 6-year-old kid with ADHD. Those kids tend to be very, very easy. The older people with the severe metabolic dysfunction that's been happening for a very long time, it's going to be tougher for them most of the time. Still doable. It's always doable.
That's awesome. Good to hear. Thank you for that. I wanted to pop over and chat with Coach Sean. Sometimes people get blurred vision when they have hyperglycemia. How would posture alignment therapy help somebody with that?
Yeah, so mainly, it was actually a post that I posted recently, uh, to where I tell people to repeat the mantra, bring your phone or your devices to your face, not your face to the devices. And particularly with anything to do with the eye, any type of blood sugar issue, your circulation is already going to be messed up. And so to mess it up even further by causing more of what we call forward head, it's restricting that pathway, that crucial pathway that goes from your head to the rest of your body or from the rest of your body to your head. It's all bottlenecked in your neck. And if that gets compressed, then those little capillaries in your eye, it goes to like smaller and smaller vessels. Those, how can you, if you don't have great circulation throughout your body, how do you expect good circulation in these tiny little capillaries? It's basically non-existent, and so it's less nutrients and resources getting to the eyes and less of the eye's ability to drain that lymph, and so it just gets caught in this process to where the more sedentary you are, the more you don't do anything about it, the more the issue will progress from there, and it won't get better until you address the postural issue, sadly. But yeah, on a better note, bringing your phone to your face, other than your face to your phone, is one of those things that you can do to help start addressing any issues that you have, what Dr. Reese calls above the shoulder symptoms. So anything that has to do with the head or the neck area has most to do with how you carry your head throughout the day.
So when you talk about bringing the phone to your face, you're saying like bring it here, bring it right eye level
Yeah,
instead of turning your head down. Is that right?
yeah, yeah. That's the first start, and it also keep you off your phone for so long because you can only hold it up for so long, just like this, before you need to take a break. And yeah, that's what I would recommend, especially if you're at work and you're sitting long hours. By the time your hand gets all tired, that's your time to get up and start walking around. So it'll breed more movement due to it just being an inconvenience.
Very true. And what's sad is today kids younger than 7 are looking down all the time at devices already, and they're developing that forward head at such a young age. So hopefully the parents out there listening can clue into that and help their kids understand better body structure and how to use those devices if they're going to be used. Coach Gingy, got a question for you. Sometimes people with hyperglycemia have anxiety, panic attacks. Would mindfulness techniques help them in a situation, and in which way?
Well, it becomes even more important to be mindful in those situations because, like we've talked about in the past, as the blood sugar runs up, as the blood sugar crashes, as the blood pressure runs up and the blood pressure crashes, there's this, this dynamic, this mind-body connection that's being tugged upon. And so if you're not mindful to your internal state, you're not mindful to the things that are causing your anxiety or your frustration or whatever it may be, you'll feel like a leaf blown about in the winds of circumstance, is kind of how I put it. And if you're not mindful in the first place, then yeah, you can kind of let things get away from you. You can have your imagination run away with you. You can have events kind of push and pull you around. But if you have blood sugar regulation problems, if you have blood pressure regulation problems, I was actually talking with somebody earlier today about this, then it can pull your emotional state any which way. And so if you're not mindful, it's just happening and you don't know what to do about it or why it's happening. You may even blame it on external circumstances. Whereas if you're mindful, you can actually be aware that, oh, you know what? I just need a Snickers bar or something. We don't recommend Snickers bars, but as Ryan was talking about in that commercial, uh, it is good to know, like, okay, I'm hangry right now. The reason why I'm emotional is because I have low blood sugar. Okay, and you can let people know, listen, I just need to eat some food. You can, create negotiations with people. And then as soon as you eat, you go back to normal. You go, okay, well, now I know it's not anything that was going on. I can actually stay grounded and emotionally regulated through the process by using mindfulness, knowing that I'll return to normal after I eat something. And the more that you work on your blood sugar regulation or blood pressure regulation or anything else, then the less that will start being highs and lows, peaks and troughs. You'll stop experiencing the extremes of it. It's kind of the nature of I don't think we talked about this, but bipolar disorder is like you don't experience very much of the middle ground. You experience the super highs and the super lows, but not the ordinary, not the boring, not the middle. And so if you notice yourself experiencing more and more of those extremes, then you want to be aware that there's probably something going on with you internally on a cellular level with blood sugar. Now, I bring this up in this way because I'm kind of piggybacking on what everybody said so far, but I also want to flip it around and let you know that there are some people that can get into these deficiencies by living stressful lives. Like if you've had a ton of stress in your life, well, guess what? Your body's going to have to resource nutrients in order to manage the stress and clean up the mess after the stress. And if you do that on a daily basis, if you run a very stressful business or job, or you've got a very stressful relationship, or you've seen war and you were part of the military or something, there's all of these peaks and lows that you can induce just going through life that will cause your body to metabolize or to somehow assimilate the experience, and you're going to be cleaning up adrenaline, cortisol, you name it. And in that process, you're going to be depleting nutrients. And if you're not supplementing, if your diet's deficient, if you don't have the raw materials in your body, then you're going to eventually come down a little bit in those nutrient stores and be more susceptible to emotions and blood sugar spikes and crashes and so on and so forth. So just know that this knife cuts on both edges, as they say. So you can induce it through mindfulness, and that can be the underlying root cause. But actually, it's funny. I put it this way to a guy I was talking to earlier. I was like, you have one problem. That's your deficiency, your inability to manage the spikes and crashes. But if that's induced by a stressful lifestyle, well, now you've got two problems. You got to eliminate the stress, and now you got to solve for the deficiency that's the result of the stress. So keep this in mind when you're thinking about your blood sugar issues, blood pressure issues, your emotional volatility, any of these things. Notice that you need to get at it from both sides, basically. You notice that you've got to manage the stress effectively and then supplement for whatever deficiencies have been created. Sorry, long explanation, but I think some good points to make.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for elaborating on that and putting the pieces together from both angles. Ryan, I wanted to ask you a question. I was speaking with a lady on a call earlier this week, a young lady. She's been feeling faint, woozy, on occasion getting blurred vision over the past few weeks, and she's passed out at work. She's feeling quite anxious about this, not knowing what's happening, and she's concerned about driving for fear that she might pass out behind the wheel. She also mentioned that her extremities get cold. However, she's been going to the regular establishments to try to get answers, and she's really not getting any help. They're just saying, oh, you're probably dehydrated. You need to get more electrolytes. You need to drink more water. And they're not really getting to the root cause of things. Do you have any thoughts or insights of what might be happening and what she might be able to do?
Well, it does sound like hypoglycemia. It could be mineral deficiency in general. It could be also oxygen deficiency. So often even things like deep breathing can help that a lot. If you're feeling faint, as you might know, you can induce fainting by quickly breathing, by rapid shallow breathing. You could pass out. I'm going to assume that it is actually low blood sugar and that her metabolism is generally low. She's skewing low. She's getting cold and stuff too. It's probably hypothyroid as well, which is not too surprising. Again, when things are low, I would expect to see more than one thing being low. So both thyroid function and blood sugar function, possibly low blood sugar, although that's not that common, but it's still on the list of things that could be low. It could even be low cholesterol. Now, some of those things could be high too, right? The metabolic dysfunction can put the pendulum in either direction, but it sounds like a blood sugar thing to me. So if she's not a member yet, then I would expect that basically as soon as she becomes a member, well, and starts doing the dietary advice and stuff and the nutrients, of course, it should get better. I used to faint all the time, by the way. I don't mention it very often. It didn't happen so much as I was a kid, but when I got into the late teens and early 20s, I was passing out all the time. And that was probably also due to my dietary choices at that time because I went vegetarian and then vegan. And when I stopped being vegan, basically it mostly went away, although I did pass out a couple more times later until I figured all that out. And yeah, it's usually extremely easy to correct if you know what you're doing, which most people don't. The normal dietary advice from the mainstream world is pretty backwards. They actually do recommend the candy bar. That's an old school thing for hypoglycemia. Well, your blood sugar's low, we'll bring it up. Bring it up with a banana or a candy bar or something. And it does work, but it's short term. Like it'll save you if you're slipping into a coma, if you're having a seizure, if you're sweating and falling over and passing out and you can't see clearly or think clearly, have a Snickers bar. It will actually fix it quite quickly. And this could happen in anyone if they were extremely exhausted, missed a night of sleep, in some kind of extremely stressful situation, your blood sugar could plummet and you could pass out. Well, a Snickers bar will bring you back from that pretty quickly. But again, that's not a fix. Another old school hypoglycemic method was to use higher proteins and frequent meals. It's somewhat similar to the mainstream advice, which it still is today, to eat more frequently. Right? They say, well, your blood sugar's crashing, so you just need to eat more frequently to keep it maintained. Again, it's a Band-Aid, although it is a strategy that does help, particularly if those meals are more skewed towards protein. Now, I know most of our audience here and most of our members that come in, so most of the people that you'll talk to on the phone about the membership, they probably already eat healthy. Most of them do. Most of the people who are watching this probably already do eat healthy, and at least healthy enough. They're trying. So they probably don't eat a donut for breakfast, and more pastries for lunch and a pizza for dinner. They probably don't. But if they did, that's the most obvious and easiest thing to correct. If you're eating too many carbohydrates without enough nutrients to process that, hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia is very, very likely. And actually, by the way, it is commonly believed that hypoglycemia tends to just turn into hyperglycemia. There's an overcompensation mechanism where you eat something and the body releases insulin because the blood sugar goes up after you eat it. And when organs are stressed or when the body's stressed in general, it tends to overcompensate things, right? Glands, when they're stressed, they enlarge, right? Think if you bang your knee on the table, inflammation comes in, it enlarges. Well, it happens in organs as well. And hormones can overcompensate as well. Like pituitary hormones can overcompensate to pull more calcium out of the blood. A little bit of a tangent there, but just saying that the overcompensation mechanism can run out and then now you're diabetic. It's at least one of the leading theories about the prime cause of hypoglycemia. Yeah, on our normal program, she should go completely fine. There's a lot of different ways that you can steer the diet. In general, like I said, eating more frequently and leaning towards protein, especially at the start, that's going to be very, very important. And a lot of people out there already do control their blood sugar that way. but it's just not all of it, right? You do have to put in the proper nutrition. Your body does physically require certain raw materials to produce insulin, to process it properly, to get blood sugar into cells, to have the liver working properly, to store the glycogen, and all that stuff does require nutrients to do so. But yeah, having the standard American diet is absolutely the easiest way to screw it up. And even a lot of people who eat healthy, like they're trying, still it's carb heavy, or they're on whole grains or something like that, and that could be screwing the whole thing up too.
Thank you for that. Can you elaborate a little bit more about the dietary changes or strategies that you were talking about earlier? You were saying there's a lot to talk about there. Could you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, we want them off the bad foods, right? So the mainstream medical world will get them to eat more frequently, and sometimes they'll say the protein thing as well. But if you just get someone to eat more frequently, it's just staving off the problem. It's not actually fixing the deficiency. What we have to do in most cases is fix the digestion, right? Digestion would be the primary root cause problem, at least one of them that people come in with. People come in with nutrient deficiencies too, but the digestion problem is going to be your biggest thing for malabsorption of many, many different nutrients. And so we want to correct that. And when we say the poor four foods, gluten, oil, fried, and fake, the main reason for getting off of those is to help your digestion improve and stop damaging your body, right? So you get off the glutens, maybe even all grains for a while. We take that on a case-by-case basis. Same with dairy. It's not on our list, but we get a lot of people off of it, at least short-term, because you want to stop inflaming the intestines. And gluten's going to be the most likely thing to be doing that. So wheat, barley, rye, and oats, the main culprits there, but there could be other greens as well. And there could be other ingredients in the diet as well that are inflammatory, things like MSG and aspartame and food dyes and all that stuff. But if you avoid the last of the poor four, the fake foods, then you get rid of a bunch of those other antagonistic foods as well. And the oils in the deep fried is primarily, well, it can screw with your digestion as well. It can cause leaky gut, but it's primarily to slow down the damage in the body, because most of the oxidative damage in the average person's body is going to be caused by consuming oils, any oils, processed oils, cooking oils, salad dressings, all that stuff, and especially deep fried food. So we want to allow the digestion to work properly. That's getting off of the gluten, possibly the dairy, possibly some other food intolerance if they have it that's not on the list. You can do an elimination diet to find those and stop the damage in the body. Because the damage in the body is twofold. First of all, obviously, it damages the body, it damages the veins, it damages the organs, causes oxidative damage all throughout the body. But second of all, now your body needs to deploy more nutrients to deal with that damage. So even if it did have enough zinc or enough B vitamins or enough chromium, vanadium, and other minerals to handle your blood sugar, theoretically it's there. That has to now be deployed to help deal with the fire. It's got to be putting out fires all the time because they're eating inflammatory foods all the time. And so there are quite a lot of people out there who eat healthy, yet it's not the poor four foods, right? Instead of white bread, they use whole wheat bread. Maybe they even grind it themselves. It's not good enough. Instead of vegetable oils and canola oil, they use cold pressed olive oil or avocado oil or something like that. It's not good enough, right? Instead of deep frying in vegetable oil, they deep fried in lard. Well, it's still not good enough, right? It's still going to be causing damage. So I'm just saying there's a lot of people who are trying and following very common advice for food, but it's not the poor four foods. And they don't usually know when to pivot or why to pivot or how to pivot, which, we don't need to fully elaborate on because it can be somewhat different for each person. We got to take it on case by case. But this whole thing can be quite easy, to be honest. Figuring out the foods can be very easy, at least for us. But the average person, if they do just get off the poor four, you should experience benefit no matter what your problem is. It might be a fast improvement. It might take longer, but chances are you're going to have at least some improvement on any symptom that you have by getting off of those foods.
Thank you for that. Well, for those of you that are just tuning in and wanting to get more information about head to toe healing, please go to drkevinreese.com. Click on the book tab if you haven't had a chance to read and start with These two books, the red and the green books, those are the best place to start to find out if head to toe healing is for you. And then once you are ready to get started, and if you want to have a free call with one of our coaches to just talk about your personal situation, we're happy to do that. Click on the start button and schedule your free call, and we'll get over to you and see how we can help you along your health journey. But we do have several questions in the comments, so we'll try to get through as many as we possibly can. Earlier, we were talking about drops in blood pressure, drops in the blood sugar. Jane says, I don't know if she's referring to her blood sugar or if she's referring to her blood pressure. She says, mine drops as low as 68, sometimes lower. Ryan, do you think that would be blood sugar or blood pressure?
Well, both. They're both metabolic. With low blood pressure specifically, I'm going to expect hypothyroidism is going to be involved there. Low thyroid function, which we did a deep dive on last week.
Absolutely. And then James is asking, do you help people that have tremors? And what would your approach be on that, Ryan?
Yeah, I had a tremor. Yeah, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm just making things up. Like I had all these symptoms just so I can talk about them. No, I had a ton of symptoms. I was born with birth defects and had childhood arthritis and a whole bunch of symptoms. So I had a tremor in there as well, and it got pretty bad. I used to do tattoos for a living. Actually, I had to hold my hand so it wouldn't shake so much. Surprising anybody let me do it, but nonetheless. Yeah, mine went away. Mine went almost 100% away. I say almost because I do think in some cases, at least, there's a little bit of nerve, a birth defect where you didn't fully develop the nervous system properly. So in my case, my hand is actually steady as a rock. In general, I'm steady. I don't have a tremor. But if I do get overly exhausted, tired, hungry, drink more than 2 glasses of wine, I'll notice a little bit of a tremor come back. So I think that's more of an unformed nerve thing. But in general, 99.9% better. My hand is steady. Before it was all the time, And I know other people with tremors too. Most of them has gone 100% or 99% gone as well, just like me. Didn't do anything specific for it. Just took all 90 essential nutrients, got off the bad foods. No specific protocol for tremors. But I noted earlier that I used to pass out. I do believe that I did have undiagnosed hypoglycemia for sure, and a lot of those mood type of problems as well in there, and other ones too. Some I didn't mention, by the way, that usually happen at night. Bedwetting. This could be for adults or children. These could be big clues to that's probably low blood sugar. Bedwetting. I did mention teeth grinding, but nightmares, night talking, night walking, night screaming, waking up at night to urinate. All these things could be a sign of low blood sugar. And let me say, there's a few people that I've encountered where their tremor did not go fully away. Sometimes it went away 60%, 30%. Obviously, we're just kind of making a judgment there. There's no actual percentage. Most of them got most of the way better. I don't think we have any case where we didn't see any improvement, but I'm going to say that that's possible. If it has anything to do with a birth defect where your nervous system was not fully properly developed, and that means you probably have a weak immune system from the start and are more sensitive to chemicals and EMF and all that stuff too, it may not go away if you were born with it. As Dr. Reese says, if you were not born with it, it's not yours. And we do have plenty of people who had it later in life, not only tremors, but like dyskinesia or tardive dyskinesia, where it's caused by a drug. So they got the jerky movements and all that stuff as well. Can look like a tremor, but full body kind of tremor. And even Tourette's type of tremors as well. Same thing. If it happened later in life, if you didn't have it as a child, chances are it's going to go 100% away if you do it properly.
Thank you for that. You were saying earlier too that sometimes alcoholism is a symptom of hyperglycemia. Could you explain that a little bit more? Or is it a craving for alcohol that happens?
It's a craving for sugar. It's a craving for sugar. So I do actually think that the vast majority of alcoholics, that is literally a symptom of hypoglycemia. And the hypoglycemia, this is a two-way circle here, or a vicious cycle, that the alcohol use habitually itself will cause the hypoglycemia. Let me first bring up a study here. This is an old study, 1973. A research team studied 200 alcoholics aged 13 to 82, and they found that 97% of them showed low blood sugar or hypoglycemia on glucose tolerance test. So 97%, and their control population there only had 18%, which I think is probably pretty accurate out of the general population, although that was in 1973, so it's probably higher than that now. The diabetes has gone up, and so has hypoglycemia. All blood sugar problems have gone up, basically. And the alcoholics' hypoglycemia disappeared once their diet was corrected. So chronic drinkers, first of all, have an inadequate nutrient intake. Typically, if you've ever known any alcoholics, I've known quite a few who will drink the beer for dinner and skip dinner. And they actually avoid food. I'm not saying all of them, but many of them don't eat very much food. They much prefer the liquor. Okay, so they don't eat enough food to begin with. Now that's causing a calorie deficit, which will screw up their metabolism. First of all. Second of all, alcohol is a diuretic, so it flushes out a bunch of nutrients like B vitamins, vitamin C. And even further than that, I guess we're on third of all, it impairs the absorption of several nutrients, especially the fat-soluble nutrients. So it flushes out the water solubles, and it impairs the absorption of the fat solubles. And my theory is, with it at least, is that they need the sugar, actually, in quotes. They need the sugar because that's the only way their body is running. It's not running off of cellular metabolism that's basically running on nutrients, where you need nutrients for your cells to create energy. Now, your cells do burn glucose for energy, but you need a bunch of nutrients to do that. And the nutrients that you need to turn sugar into energy are the ones that are most affected by alcohol use. So now you have the least ability to actually get energy from food. And keep in mind, alcoholics tend not to eat that much food to begin with. So they're at a severe energy deficit. And so what can the body run off of? Well, one thing that's absorbed really easily are simple sugars. Alcohol is a simple sugar, right? So it could be table sugar as well. The person could just be a chocolate junkie, chocolateholic, right? Where they actually need it. And you ever seen an alcoholic who doesn't have a drink for a few hours? They can start to get what? Some of those symptoms we talked about earlier. Irritability, brain fog, memory loss, they're kind of spaced, might have jerky movements, might have a tremor, might pass out, right? It's a genuine concern for getting alcoholics off of alcohol right away. So what I like to do is actually replace the alcohol with actual sugar. And not everyone agrees with this protocol here, but I think it works pretty well. I would actually get them to consume candy bars for a while. And I know that sounds blasphemous, but what's better, right? A Snickers or a vodka? To me, I'd rather choose the Snickers because they actually do require the sugar, at least for a while. We'd wean it down. We'd boost the nutrients up big time at the same time. And of course, get them on healthy food habits. But if you've ever worked with an alcoholic, you would know getting them to change their food is a big task, right? So the more effective for me, at least in dealing with the person, it's not like I can force them to eat, a nice chicken and potato dinner or something like that. I can't do that. But what I can tell them to do is have a candy bar every time they want to have a drink, which again sounds crazy, but at the same time, we're putting in high doses, especially of those nutrients that were depleted from years of alcoholism. And so you're bringing the nutrients up, and then you start bringing the sugar down, right? And at that point, they should be thinking clearer, feeling better, sleeping better, and hopefully at that point they can start to now actually eat real foods and cook real foods for themselves and stuff, because that's one of the big problems with alcoholics. They simply don't eat real food, many of them.
Wow. Thank you so much. I think we may have to bring this topic up another time because there's so much content here. It's amazing. Coach Sean, I have a question for you. And one of our comments in the chat was your mic is a little bit low, so either speak a little louder or have it turn up your mic. So I understand that posture alignment therapy is gentle, easy movements that people from age 2 to 100 can do. In your opinion, why is posture alignment therapy so effective in assisting people in reversing chronic conditions?
So mainly with posture alignment therapy, out of the entire human history, our little dot is our error, and we've been sedentary for longer than any point in the human history. And our bodies, because of that prior history, they have adapted and molded into the perfect version that is supposed to be able to do all of the things that humans used to do: jumping, crawling, climbing, hunting, whatever. And so when we really, when we out of nowhere just started living sedentary lifestyles, that impacted our bodies. We began to experience more pain because we're not moving as we should be moving. And uh, it led to this understanding that I don't know what exactly caused it, but most people got into this uh, programming to where they were told that with pain equals you not moving. When you don't move, you'll help the pain. And for like broken legs and like sprained ankles, stuff like that, like where you have to heal the bone or you have to heal the bone, the muscle, that's fine. But like any type of like nerve pain, or you're dealing with joint pain in particular, those, you're not moving correctly. And so what posture alignment therapy does is, if you have any type of postural dysfunction, even getting into arthritis or osteoporosis or degenerative disc disease, things like that, and you're trying to figure out why, and a big one actually is carpal tunnel, and even uh, can't think right now, but basically, when you have these postural issues, it's not that you need to stop using that or you're using that muscle or area too much. It's that you're using it improperly. And so that's what posture alignment therapy does. It teaches you how to move properly so you can give your body the space to heal itself, because it knows how to. It's just you're getting in the way of it in a way. And beyond that, posture also modulates circulation. So you have your oxygen and blood circulation, which delivers nutrients throughout the body. And you have your lymph circulation, which delivers the lymph from the organs. And then you have your nerves, and there's three different types of nerves. There's the autonomic nerves, there's the sensory, and then there's the motor nerves. And all of those are impacted. If anything gets pinched or compressed in any way, any posture dysfunction that you have in your body, then it's going to impact that nerve as well, not just the circulation, not just the blood, and certainly not just cause pain in that area. It's going to affect all of the organs and any of the streams, like your blood circulation and your lymph and your nerves. It's going to affect those areas as well. And so posture therapy actually leaks into nutritional deficiencies or nutritional some type of chronic disease, for better words. And so I just think that the importance of posture therapy is just getting yourself to move correctly, because if you don't get ahead of your posture deteriorating, and after age 50, you start to lose your muscle mass. And so you need to do something. You need to do something to help build those muscles or maintain those muscles, because after that point, you're going to decline, and you're going to continue to decline to where you can't get off the floor like you used to. You can't go down the stairs anymore like you used to. And there's certain chronic diseases, so sea monster is one, that are impacted when you aren't utilizing your muscles properly. And so it's not just, oh, I need to do posture alignment therapy to fix the crook in my neck. It's impacting your entire body's health. And if you don't do anything about it, it's going to continue to get worse. And it may be that one thing that you have chronic disease, you've taken all the supplements that you needed to take, and you're still having those symptoms, and it's actually getting worse, then I would look into posture alignment therapy. Look where your neck is located. Do you have forward head? Do you have rounded shoulders? Do you have a hip hike? Do you have sway back? Like you got to look into these things, because the areas that the posture is affected is also the area where the organs in that area are affected as well. And if organs don't get the resources they need, they're going to fall apart.
Thank you for that. And what's amazing about what you shared, you said things change after age 50,
Hmm.
and people are not able to keep the muscle as easily. However, we have so many people in our membership that are 40, 50, 60, 70, and some even 80 years old, and they're increasing their mobility, they're increasing their strength. And it's just really exciting to see how excited people are, especially once they're even retired and they're not doing, well, they're not doing their regular occupations. They're living life with more vitality. And that's what the whole head to toe healing program can do for you when you combine nutrition, posture, and mindfulness work all together. And so if that is something that is interesting to you, go to drkevinreese.com, get more information about it. You might want to hit on the book tab first, get the red and green book for starters, find out about head to toe healing, and then book an appointment with us. Click on the start page and you can book a free appointment for you to talk to one of our coaches to find out a little bit more about what we do and how it might benefit you on your healing journey. We have some
That
other questions
was
here. Oh,
really
go
quick,
ahead.
Karen. That was a good point you brought up. And yeah, a lot of the people in our membership, especially the ones that go to the posture class, are even retired. And that's like a constant story that the minute, like, it could be the strongest woman, it could be the strongest man, they did everything, they worked long hours. And then the minute they retired, that's when their health declined. That's when all of the issues came up out of nowhere. And that's also the one period in their life they're probably the most sedentary they ever were. And so I think that getting motion or not getting motion with them, in that case, if you're retired and you're not doing as much, I think that is like the worst thing for your health. You need to find something else to do, some type of activity or hobby that you can do that keeps you moving or gets like a little supplement, a little ounce of movement throughout the day, enough to sustain you and also keep the need for the muscles. That's nature's law. Like, nature will not keep anything that it doesn't need. And so if you don't use your muscles, you will lose them.
That is so true. Absolutely. And what's amazing is it's not just about being active, it's about letting your body flow and move in the way it was designed to. And that's the beauty of posture alignment therapy. It can help you keep that position or get back into that position again. So a couple other questions that we have here in the chat. Mary's asking, this one might direct this towards Ryan. She says, I have nerve damage from a bad surgery to a broken elbow. Now I have an electrical feeling going through my legs 24/7. Is that something nutrition might help with? And this might be a good question for Coach Sean too.
Well, I do use nutrition, but I also use some anti-EMF devices, especially in the cases of nerve damage or accidents or injuries, especially when they have that electrical feeling. And actually, I expect when we apply the device, when they apply the, because this will be virtual here, when they get it and they put it on, they might actually experience an increase in electrical sensation or even pain. To me, that has always been a sign that it did have something to do with EMF. We know that the body produces its own frequencies in order to heal, and you could look at Dr. Robert Becker's books for much more on that. But nonetheless, I use anti-EMF devices, and I do actually experience them to have. I expect them to have more nerve pain up front, which sounds a bit weird, but I would expect that also to be one of the most important parts of healing, at least in my experience using those devices. I would still use nutrition at the same time. Yes, you need all the raw materials to rebuild nerve tissue and all the tissues around it and everything like that. But yeah, no doubt I would recommend the EMF devices as well.
Coach Sean, any thoughts on this one? If she has damage from a bad surgery and she has nerve damage, an electrical feeling going all the way through her legs 24/7.
Yeah, that's just something that we would have to see in posture therapy if we can do something about. Ultimately, it's just like it could be something in a botched surgery that could have frayed something as far as the nerves. But I would always say it's worth a try. It's better than it turning in or developing into something worse. Um, there's only I would need a little bit more context and see how their body is aligned to possibly see the connection between the elbow and the leg.
Question for Ryan. How can you address cardiac arrest? Are there any early symptoms or signs that you know of to prevent that?
Oh, you might just have had high blood pressure. You might have had high platelets or something that would say that you're more likely to have blood clots. A lot of the nutrients, for example, vitamin E, they found in two very large studies, which was the physicians follow-up study or the health professionals follow-up study and the Harvard Nurses Health study. They did find that vitamin E reduced heart disease in general by 40%, but which is very impressive. But both men and women didn't get a benefit unless they took it for at least 2 years. So in terms of early intervention, I mean, I would still use all those things. I would use the vitamin E as well. It's just that it seems to be far more effective when it's done ahead of time. So I personally wouldn't be waiting to see signs and signals, and if you have high blood pressure or, high platelets or anything like that, your doctor's been warning you about blood clots or anything like that. I mean, you're way past the point where you should have started doing something about that already. And there are many, many different nutrients involved in blood viscosity and anti-clotting and heart function in general, circulation in general. As mentioned before too, the poor four foods, they're both going to impair your ability to absorb nutrients and they're going to damage the system. What gets damaged first? The cardiovascular system. Because when you absorb foods, where do they go? Into the veins, right? So that's what's damaged first. The veins are damaged first. So yeah, I mean, they're mostly kind of subtle things, like you don't notice blood pressure unless you measure it. But you just walking around or looking at someone, not really. There's not going to be overt clues there. I mean, you can look at someone and tell that they have certain deficiencies and certain health problems, but you can't predict with accuracy who's going to get a heart attack or not, right? But I would take all 90 essential nutrients, I guess is the point. Don't wait for signs and signals. And if you have any small symptoms at all, even if you don't, right? We're of the belief that everybody should be on the 90 essential nutrients. We're deficient on many of them to begin with. Our food supply is chronically deficient in many, many different nutrients. And even those who know how to navigate the food system, and theoretically you could get all the vitamins and amino acids and essential fatty acids, it's still tough to do. I know how to do it. It's not practical, really. It's not really practical. And if you have any problem already, you actually need more nutrients to heal than you do to maintain. And with some of those nutrients, some of those numbers, it can be utterly impossible to add that up in food. So everyone should be on the 90 essential nutrients from before birth, is what we believe, 6 months prior to conception for the mother, all the way through the pregnancy, all the way through breastfeeding, all the way through the life. And if any problems do crop up at that point, they're going to be a lot more manageable because any deficiency will not be as pronounced. But people come through the door with wild, incredibly deficient states. And I would expect that from the average person, for them to have a dozen or more serious deficiencies that are not picked up on medical tests or blood tests or anything like that. And they probably have a bunch of minor symptoms that would give us clues to that or give the trained eye clues to that. But yeah, don't wait. Get started. We do have a few members who do this just as preventative. It's fantastic. It takes a lot to commit when you don't have an actual health problem. But if you don't want a health problem later, you got to do the best that you can now. And that includes all 90 essential nutrients, avoiding the bad foods, and doing some other things. Mindfulness, posture, paying attention to EMF and mitigating it wherever possible, and more.
That is so true. We have many members that are doing things just to kind of keep their health on track. Think of it as a body tune-up, just like you would for your car. You go in and do regular maintenance on your car every 10,000 miles just to make sure everything's functioning right. Same with us. We need it even more than the vehicles do. A question here, I'm going to direct this towards Coach Gingy. This is from Erica. She says, how do you tell a headstrong 17-year-old that getting off the poor four foods can help with acne instead of going back on medication?
Oh, teenagers. Um, Speak their language. That's probably the best piece of advice I could use. There are things in a teenager's life that they care more about than acne, than eating healthy, and you have to appeal to those things. Like for example, my little nephew, we told him that he wants to eat his vegetables, and he rebelled and he said no. Okay, great. So we told him that Daddy eats vegetables because he wants to be big and strong like Popeye, which was a TV show that he was watching at the time. And he said, I want to be big and strong like Popeye. And so he started eating his vegetables, and now he looks forward to his vegetables, and he cared more about being like Popeye than eating correctly. And this is a bad analogy for a 17-year-old because 17-year-olds probably not watching Popeye or going to be as easily manipulated. But the whole point is to talk to the 17-year-old, find out what they really care about. Most kids are either like trend setters or trend followers. And so I would look at what types of trends your son or daughter, I don't know who it was, what your child is driven by and interested in, and then connect those things. So like if, Taylor Swift, for example, hey, guess what? Taylor Swift eats her vegetables. So I mean, there's things like that, but all in all, I found that treating children like adults and really communicating to them in a grounded, intentional way, giving them information is the best thing that you could do, especially 17. That kid is looking at adult life here soon, right around the corner, and is going to have to step into that at some point. And even if, you know, they don't change their diet right off the bat, maybe they do in a year or two when they're out on their own. Um, so if they understand that, the different sections of acne and how they present based off what the underlying root cause is, and say, hey, here's a good thing for you to understand. If you have back knee, if you have chin acne, if you have like around the nose, that means that there's this other stuff going on underneath it. So because of your acne, you want to pay more attention to this in your diet and be healthier. It's probably one of the poor four foods. It's something like that that will actually enroll them into having clear skin. Hey, don't you want to have clear skin like so and so, or your friend, or me, or whoever it is, whoever they look up to? It gives them something and someone to aspire to, which can be their motivator to stand the inevitable criticism that all 17-year-olds deal with. Either it's going to be a friend being like, oh, you like your vegetables, huh? Or it's going to be some TV show scene where some kid gets criticized for bringing a lunch to school or something like that. So you have to understand that the child is very socially conscious at this time and just play into that. Be loving, be unconditional, be compassionate and understanding and patient and forgiving, and those things will come through. And if the child feels like, yeah, this my parent cares about me and this is important for me, I no longer want to have this, I know what the root cause is, I'm seeing how I'm continuing to create it over and over and over, then you let the kid make their own mistakes and they eventually come around. At least I know I did, and a lot of other kids did. Made a lot of bad decisions in my teens and 20s, and then good decisions after that. So it kind of bounces back. The good news is at 17, that kid can bounce back from almost anything, depending on how far gone they are. But I was talking with somebody earlier today, and he was talking about how his child has some issues, and I was like, man, to be honest, like you don't have to do the full protocol. Just get them off the problematic foods, and those issues should repair pretty quickly. So, do your best while the kid's at home. Do your best to set your kid up for real life and be there along the way. That's all I can really
Good,
say.
good advice. Life lessons are the best lessons. And it sounds
Exactly.
like your son is going through those life lessons right now. So another question here from Joe, directing this over to Coach Ryan. My 18-year-old son was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. What can he implement naturally to alleviate these symptoms?
Actually, Coach Sean is more of an expert on this than I am because he had ulcerative colitis and he actually taught me a lot. It's actually one of the, I don't mean to give his story for him, but it's one of the things that got him deep into this business. And he started working with me and realized that I didn't have all the answers for digestion, because typically our normal stuff fixes it, right? Getting off the bad foods, getting on the 90 essential nutrients. We use our regular digestion ingredients, which are heavy duty, high doses of enzymes and probiotics and some other digestive ingredients. We use that with almost everyone when they start. And almost every time, if you come in with Crohn's, colitis, diverticulitis, IBS, whatever it is, usually it starts to clear right on up and it's smooth sailing, just starts getting better. It's usually very easy. But as Coach Sean knows, it can actually become far more difficult in some cases. So I would give my general answer and say get off the poor four foods and be extremely strict with that. But when you have the initial ulcerative colitis, ulcers are just wounds that won't heal, right? So there's open wounds in the colon. That can be fixed. Ulcers anywhere in the body can be fixed. It can be tricky. Certain nutrients can really, really help with that, such as vitamin A and zinc. Vitamin A, the best source for me is eating liver 1 to 3 times per week, by the way, and anyone could follow that advice, including this child, in my opinion. And zinc, don't give a child a zinc supplement without consulting with somebody who knows what they're doing first. But the list of foods to avoid can get a lot longer when the person has active ulcerative colitis, because the area is so irritated. So it's often much more restrictive than our normal, get off the poor four foods. And you would need guidance for that because you can be so sensitive. I don't know the state of this child. Sometimes they have colitis and they don't have a lot of symptoms. But if they do have a lot of symptoms, it can be very tricky because they're very sensitive to everything. So we've got to kind of suggest something and literally see how it goes once, and then maybe give another recommendation the very next day, because they can be that sensitive. So I'm sure Coach Sean could elaborate more, but there's stuff that once they have colitis, we can branch out from our normal ingredients. We can start using more herbal formulas. There are several herbs that are quite effective for it. Using dietary strategies, but again, it's not systematized. It's not like just follow this list. Like, it's going to be customized and it's going to be changed. Chances are it's going to be changed several times in the ongoing weeks and months. But it can be fully healed, but it can be tricky.
Coach Sean, do you have any extra insights on this?
Yeah, he basically said a good bit of it. Like, I would recommend even finding, like, writing food diary, making a food diary, and keeping your food choices like extremely small so you can control and know what foods could be causing what type of flare up. Because what you don't want to get into is you're consuming numerous different types of foods, and then you get into a flare up and you don't know what's causing the flare up. And everything you eat seems like it's causing the flare up, and it could just be like a sauce or oil that you're putting on the food, which you shouldn't be. And it could get very specific. So find your safe meals is one. Don't neglect the other the other two modalities, which is mindfulness. I remember my doctor, it was a medical doctor, that actually told me that, I have sick mindset. I'm in that sick mindset to where I know I'm sick and I act like I'm sick. I respond to things like I'm sick. Oh, woe was me, So getting out of that type of mindset, and getting more into a healing mindset and figuring out how to control those emotions is very much a part of the gut. I mean, you already heard of the brain and gut axis. And so paying attention to how you feel throughout the day, that could impact your gut health, which impacts the ability for you to get rid of ulcerative colitis. And then the third thing was something I never applied. In all the years that I dealt with ulcerative colitis, I never thought that posture could be that thing that was impacting my health. But Dr. Reese showed me that I had sway back, which is literally the body is splaying out onto the organs, mainly the digestive organs. So your intestines, your colon, it's when your pelvis is forward and all that pressure is just packed in on that digestion system, and it impacts the motility. It impacts its ability to, as I said earlier in this recording, the organ's ability to get or receive resources, nutrients, oxygen, drain lymph. And if these things aren't cleared up, you'll just continue to deal with the ulcerative colitis. I mean, I was in the same cycle until I started doing posture alignment therapy. And that's when I noticed things start to lighten up. That was the only time I noticed. I already had the nutrients there. I was taking so many nutrients, but nothing was really impacting me until I realized that the nutrients could just very much not be getting to the right area. You can take all the nutrients in the world, but if you can't get it to the organs or to whatever process needs those materials, then it's like you're not taking it at all. So yeah, that's just my spiel, but I would recommend getting somebody that can help guide you, like a coach or some type of guidance. I've been in numerous Facebook groups. I've been doing everything on my own, doing all the research on my own. And while I did learn a lot, I never got as far until I started working with someone that could help me. So get help.
Thank you, Coach Sean. That's awesome. And Ryan and Gingy. If you're curious about head to toe healing and how it might reverse your chronic pains, conditions, and get your life and your health back to where you want it to be, where you're flourishing, go to drkevinreese.com. Check out the book page first, get the red and the green books. Start there to find out if head to toe healing is for you, and then also book an appointment with us when you're ready and have additional questions. You might want to chat with one of our coaches to see if this is the next direction you need to take to really turn your life around. We'll handle a couple more questions and then we'll need to wrap up for today. Anna B is asking a question. This one I'm going to direct towards Ryan. How can I really help horrible sleep insomnia? I can only sleep during the day, and I'm not sure what I can do.
They're probably deficient in many, many different nutrients, many different B vitamins, many different minerals, the calcium group, magnesium and its cofactors. Chances are there's multiple nutrient deficiencies. And it is a huge problem. You do need to sleep. You can't heal if you don't sleep properly, right? So the normal stuff is what we would start with. We'd start with getting off the bad foods, getting on the 90 essential nutrients. Almost always they start to sleep better. Sometimes it's a spectacular reversal. I was an insomniac for 25 years. Remember I mentioned I had all those health problems. Well, in that same nutrient deficiency category is insomnia. And I was insomniac for 25 years. Now I got lucky. Within 1 week of doing the proper mineral dose, I could sleep properly. Even less than that. It was probably in the first few days. I slept better than I ever had in my life. And I have seen that several times, although I will comment that it's gotten harder in recent years due to the increase in EMF is my strong belief there. So I would also pay close attention to EMF. And this is something that you can do without buying anything or without joining the program, although you should join the program. But anybody should clear their bedroom of electronics as the first thing if you have a sleep problem. That means everything. That means no lamps on the bedstand. Means unplug everything. No digital clock. You can use a battery-powered clock if you need a clock. Definitely no cell phone. Not even turned off. I'm not going to go all the way into it now because we're overtime right now. But turn the phone off and get it out of the room, and turn the Wi-Fi off. If the bed is up next to an outlet against the wall, pull it away from the wall. Use a Faraday sheet that goes around it. It looks kind of like a mosquito net, a Faraday net. You can use grounding sheets. Pay close attention to EMF, and if you haven't yet, start researching these things because there's a lot of different things that you can do to help mitigate EMF without purchasing anything. Those are the things that you should do today, and then you should research more about EMF. And if you get into the program, we could talk more about it as well. We can get you on the 90 essential nutrients. You can get off the poor 4 foods right now. Stop inflaming the body. That could have something to do with this as well. And be mindful about it. There is pretty common advice like go to sleep at the same time, even if you're not tired, right? Wake up early, even if you're exhausted because you rolled around until 4 a.m. Well, wake up at 7 and force yourself to stay awake. Do not nap, right? You can try to force yourself into the proper schedule, and that does help to a degree. There are some thinking techniques that can help you when you're trying to sleep that they have helped me before as well. I'm not going to have time to elaborate fully on this because, again, we're already over time. But I would start paying attention to these things and do all the immediate simple things that you could do, like getting off the bad foods, unplugging everything, getting the phone out of the room, and so on. And yeah, with a full spectrum 90 essential nutrients, it should get better. But I will say, as I already said, it's gotten trickier in recent years, largely due to the EMF. But still, we would use everything at our disposal to help you get to sleep, because no matter what other symptoms you have, you need to sleep. Chances are for them to get better. Probably won't get better until you sleep. So that would be our top priority.
Fantastic. Gingy, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about a couple of different things that people do to try to fall asleep, like thinking about their day or planning for tomorrow, or even counting sheep, that kind of stuff. What I find is that the more you can get in your head about things, the more you're thinking. Like we know, the brain is like one of the biggest calorie consumers in the body. You don't want to agitate and create more thinking and mental processes going on. So one of the things that I recommend people do is they get out of their head and they get more into their physical sensations. So breathing exercises are good. You can just practice breathing. You know, we do box breathing, and anybody can do this. It's just a simple breath exercise. And if you're focusing all your mental activity on a physiological process, or you're just trying to relax your body, or maybe you're kind of massaging part of your arm or something, anything like that, that slows down and limits the amount of thinking you have, the more you're going to get into your body and fall asleep, because the thinking will actually keep you up. So a lot of people that have insomnia, they'll be like worried about something, they'll have anxiety, or they'll have some type of depression, or they'll be obsessing thinking about something else, or they'll be in a fearful state, or they've been activating the sympathetic nervous system, their fight or flight response, and they're kind of stuck on, even though they feel exhausted. And like Ryan said, there are certain patterns to the day. You want to make sure that you go to sleep early and you wake up early. The sun goes down, your body's thinking it's time for sleep. The sun comes up, your body starts thinking it's time to wake up. And the more of a routine you can get in, the easier it will be to sleep. And so these are some of the things that anybody and everybody can do to enhance their sleep, and also to maybe doing less food before bed, or more food, depending on if you're in a calorie deficit, something like that. So I wanted to throw a couple things out there like that, because I know a lot of people struggle with sleep, and it's very, very easy to be stuck in the head about all of this. And that's the last place you want to be. You want to breathe, you want to relax, maybe take a hot bath before bed and relax all your muscles, and then jump right in bed and fall asleep. Or even a hot shower would work too if you don't have a bath. So things like that, gratitude, prayer, hot baths, anything that like relaxes the nervous system, amazing for sleep.
Thank you for that extra information, Gingy. You're always a wealth of information. For those of you that are interested in head to toe healing, we're going to wrap up for today, but go to drkevinreese.com. There's a lot of links on our website. You can get access to the books that Dr. Reese has out. These are the first two to start with, the red and the green book. And then go over to, we also have a link to our YouTube channel there, so you can get into more educational material if you want to explore more, or book an appointment with one of our coaches, and we would be happy to chat with you about your situation and what's going on with you and how you're trying to accomplish your health goals. But have a wonderful rest of your day. We're excited that you took part of your day with us, and be well, and we will see you next time. We'll be back here next week, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday.
Stay healthy.